Welcome back to the Power and Purpose podcast. I am your host, Vanessa Soul. Thank you so much for tuning in and investing your time and your energy into tuning into today's episode. I greatly appreciate it. And I am super excited for today's conversation. We have Chelsea Fornier, and she is an intuitive business mentor and strategist helping sensitive leaders protect their energy, align with their mission, and grow sustainably. She blends practical business strategy with intuitive insight to help conscious entrepreneurs lead with sovereignty, clarity, and energetic resilience. Chelsea, thanks so much for being on the show today.
Thanks for having me, Vanessa. I love this show.
Thank you. That means a lot. And so you're probably ready for my signature question. I've been obsessed with it for like a year and a half now. Who are you and who are you not?
I wanted to share, I say I'm an intuitive business mentor, and we all make up these titles of what we are and who we serve, right? At the core, I am both a self-developed and trained intuitive channel and psychic being, and I'm also a former business lawyer who shifted into business consulting and coaching for almost 15 years. So really straddling these two spaces. I used to run 6-month masterminds and teach launch strategy and conversion metrics. So there's that side of me. I've been around the block in online business, and I've struggled deeply with finding my path of how to navigate the hustle culture, the icky sales tactics, the rigid structure that's taught by most online coaches and gurus. Because as a highly sensitive, intuitive being who has also struggled with chronic health, and I am neurodivergent, I am autistic and have ADHD, right? There's all these different sides of who I am, and I care deeply about honoring my capacity and building a business that works with my life in new seasons as they unfold and evolve, because as human beings, we are all evolving. So there, to describe who I am, there's the part of me that is launching out, planning out my launch strategy, but using my pendulum, or committing to a content plan on Monday and then receiving an intuitive download on Thursday and changing it. I'm the mentor who works with clients who can coach you through writing copy for your group program while you drop into your Akashic records, if that's part of your practice. So holding space for all of those parts, as I have all of those parts. And who I'm not the coach who tells you to just push through resistance or ignore that your body is sending you signals that something should be a no. I'm not here to give cookie cutter strategy or shame you out of an evolution that your soul is really calling you towards because it's changing things, right? And I'm definitely not leading from a version of success that I've outgrown. I am always evolving. My clients are too, and that's who I love supporting.
Beautiful. I love that. And this is an additional question.
Huh.
What was the bridge between being that high achieving lawyer
Hmm.
into an intuitive business mentor for sensitive leaders? What was that transformation like? What was that transition like? Was it immediate? Did it take time? Was it
Oh,
ambiguous?
Vanessa, I wish it was simpler and shorter and like more seamless. Evolution is messy, right? So I started my professional life as a small business attorney, and I think what's often a helpful story to share, we all have a moment where we can either listen or not listen, right? And so I was working at a big law firm in Maine and doing everything I was supposed to be doing, checking the boxes, like graduating law school, top of my class, getting an offer from a big firm and creating this life that was successful from the outside. But I remember this morning viscerally, it was a Tuesday morning, and I was an associate at the law firm. I was leading a massive corporate merger closing. It should have felt like a milestone. Like I was being trusted by a senior partner to do something that most people at my level were not being asked. But I was putting so much pressure on myself, in addition to the reality of pressure, right? And that morning, I was getting out of the shower, and out of nowhere, I collapsed in a panic attack. I couldn't breathe. And the first thought that came to my mind was not, I need help. The first thought I had was, I don't have time for this.
Hmm.
And that sentence haunted me because if I didn't have time to figure out why I wasn't breathing, What did I have time for? As my 5-year-old son would say, breathing's kind of a big deal, right? And so that moment revealed a truth that I had built a path based on pressure and performative desires that had nothing to do with what my soul wanted, just because I was good at it. And that served as a turning point. That was, gosh, I don't know, 2010-ish. And so I began the long process of unraveling what success really meant to me, untangling. I am an empath. And so what had I absorbed from my family, my professors, society, these roles that I was playing? What was really mine? So it was not pretty. It was not quick. I left a toxic marriage and the practice of law all at the same time. So it was a bit of a crumbling. And I dove into healing about a decade ago, really focusing on intuitive development, stepping into self leadership, and evolving what that meant as it became, I would say, steadier under my feet, right? Like at first, what felt safe. And then I had more capacity in what felt safe. And so that's why now I teach sensitive visionary business owners how to grow sustainable businesses, but it's not from some like Pinterest version of what you think your day should be like or your 5-step morning process. Like, that's not my jam. I founded my company and I named it Intuitive Business by Design because I believe that you can intentionally design your business with intuition as a business strategy. What does it look like for you to receive guidance, to tap into your spirit team, to have intuition rituals? And so I have developed what I've called the rooted method, where I help entrepreneurs grow momentum in very specific 90-day periods of time and then allowing them to see that momentum unfold.
What do you think was like the pivotal moment during that transition? I love to hone in on the transition
Yeah,
piece
yeah,
from our previous
right.
reality
Phase
into
one.
our new narrative, because
Yeah,
so many of us go through this process more than
yeah,
once,
yeah,
3 times,
that's
4
true.
times. So
Totally.
what do you think that pivotal moment was?
For me, it was motherhood. It
Okay.
was labor and delivery with my son. And he was born in late 2019. So then shifting into becoming a pandemic mother and the dark nights of the soul that really, I started to realize how protective I was of this new human being who I was just getting to know, how protective I was of his boundaries and protecting anything I desired for him, that it became a stark difference of how much I had people pleased and wasn't sticking to that for myself. And so as I started to witness that and really say, well, what would it look like to lead myself in a way where I am protecting myself, and what feels self-loving and what feels like I am being there for myself in the way that I know I want to be there for him. And so a lot of my unwinding has also been reparenting and letting it all be messy. And, over the past, he's almost 6 now. And so it has really been growing up myself, even though I'm a older mother. It was a geriatric pregnancy, right? But growing up with myself as a mother and as a business owner has been a very challenging, but I would say very beautiful, like divine timing and everything, allowing me to stand on my own 2 feet in the business as a CEO in a way I didn't 6 years ago, 7 years ago, even though
Mhm.
I've been doing this as long as I have been.
Like, how for you, everyone has their own story when it comes to really activating our intuition in a way where we actually start to use it for others.
Yeah,
Everyone, I believe everyone is intuitive, and we're all
yeah,
kind of using it for ourselves, whether we know it or not, I believe.
yeah, yeah.
Now, I'm interested to see what types of things or practices or habits or
Mm.
experiences were you diving into to develop your intuition more and use it for others?
I have been both self-taught and trained working with intuitive mentors, I would say, or intuitive development teachers. I've worked with 2 or 3, I would say, over the past 6 years in pockets of time. And, when you said experience, something I've actually never shared this story publicly, but I feel like you're calling it forward. On September 7th of last year, so 2024, I was with my grandmother through her dying days. I had flown up to be with her in what I thought would be kind of a final visit, and it turned out she had declined greatly from what we had known from the hospice care that she was with. And so I was with her final 3 days until her final breath. And in being really her death doula, she had always been, unknowingly to me at the time, an intuitive mentor for me. She was someone who, she would talk about her and her sister casting curses, and she would say these things, and like, I'm a little bowl cut little girl, like hanging out with her, but she would just talk about these things with me more than with others. And I just started to notice that. And as I was with her and felt her soul leaving her body, was when it became very clear to me that I was being called to do energetic support for others. I had been learning all of these things for my own development and understanding and spiritual growth. And there was definitely a place and a time for that. And as that shift happened, I really started to explore, what does it look like to trust that these gifts, for me, it's distinctively clairaudience, clairvoyance. I am a channel, and so, can I trust that, gosh, if someone pays me money, can I show up and turn this on? Like that trust, when you're doing healing work or energetic work, you have to get to a place where you can believe that you can tap into it on a regular basis. On a Tuesday, when someone's Zoom calendar shows up and you're supposed to show up and do an energy reading, and I really felt called to step into that level of trust and started doing some like beta group readings and taking on some clients who I knew would give me honest feedback, and seeing the evidence and the amount of people that were saying there's no other way you could have known this. Like, I've never told anyone this. That visual you described, I saw yesterday. And so that really shifted things for me of how I want to show up in my business. Because I'll be honest, Vanessa, for years, I have shown up saying I'm a former lawyer, a business coach, and consultant for 15 years. Oh, and by the way, once you get into working with me, maybe I'll invite you into the fact that I'm also an intuitive. And with this catalyst shift, I have flipped that to really be saying, I'm a channel, I'm a psychic, I'm highly intuitive. When you work with me, I'm going to help you cultivate that for yourself. And oh, by the way, I have all this experience as well and a Juris Doctorate degree. And so that flip was definitely caused by that experience of being with my grandmother and just witnessing the amount of miracles that had to have happened to put me in that scenario. It was definitely divinely called. And so, really following through with that has been my mission, if you will, really for the past year or so.
Beautiful. And thank you so much for sharing your grandmother's transition as an activator.
Mm.
I mean, it sounds like your intuition was already activated for yourself, your own life.
Mhm.
And for anyone listening, I'm an intuitive. And if you're an intuitive and you're listening, you know that it's a different experience using your intuition for yourself,
Yeah.
and and then taking like another, graduating to the next level and activating it to where you're a pure channel for other people,
Mhm.
like on the
Mhm.
drop of a dime, just like Chelsea was saying.
Yeah.
But I love that story of your grandmother being that activator. One, because my grandmother also made her transition last year.
Mm.
And I'm sure she activated something. I mean, I knew that she was also going to be like on my spirit team as soon as she
Yeah.
crossed over.
Yeah.
So, my grieving process was different. It wasn't. There was still grief there, because
Mhm.
the relationship is changing. Anytime we have
Yeah.
change,
Yeah.
any type of change, there's a little bit of grief. But I just think that's beautiful. I just
Mm.
think it's beautiful, and I'm so fascinated about how the universe really calls us forth
Mm.
into our next level of intuitive practice. Because I hear so many great stories, and every story is so unique and so powerful in its own right, just like
Yeah.
yours.
Yeah.
And I like to highlight this for the listeners because if you're listening, your intuitive calling is not going to look like mine. Mine
Mm.
happened, 2020. I'm doing light language. and and dropping in the ice bath, and in the ice bath was allowing me to tap more into my clear audience and my clairvoyance. But your journey is not going to look like mine. It's not going to look like
Yeah.
Chelsea's. So you just have to be open and receptive. I think receptivity is a
Mm.
really powerful energy when we're dealing with intuition. Now, my next question for you is, how do you think, I'm trying to phrase this correctly without making an assumption here. Put it this way. Do you think that if more people use intuitive skills and abilities in 3D tasks,
Yeah.
businesses, just like you, just like me, how do you see the trajectory of our
Mm.
society? Do you feel like it'll be the same, slightly different?
Hmm.
What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think so many of us who may feel like we're straddling, right? Like I've got to pay the mortgage, I need to pick up my son at kindergarten. Like there's the 3D that we're living in. And the more that we can carve out small rituals, small practices, ways of feeling more connected, I feel like there is an evolution that is happening, an up-leveling that is happening. Is it going to happen for everyone? I don't know. Sometimes I think about this, how much time and energy I put every day into clearing my energy and connecting in. And it's not like, for me, exorbitant amounts of time, but how many times a day do I touch a crystal with an intention, pull an oracle card, use my pendulum, clear my son's energy before he goes to bed? And there's still challenges in my life, right? Like being connected in does not mean that all of a sudden all of the challenges go away and everything happens immediately how you want it. But when I am more tapped in, tuned in, turned on, my manifestation powers are undeniable. We manifested the house that I'm recording this in, with like, again, just like dramatic, how could all of these things been synchronistic on their own? And so I often wonder, how do people who are not tapping in at all get through their day if life is challenging in the 3D with practices and a commitment? And so I do believe that things can become easier in larger communities, especially if you're surrounding yourself with people who are in a similar wavelength or at least attempting to explore. Like sometimes when I'm just out in the world and I look around at some people, I surround myself, I'm sure you do as well, and all the amazing guests you bring on, we're committed to personal growth. And there we can look around in the world and not everybody is. And it confuses me. I can look out at people who, they're just living their day. And I wonder, how are you getting through the day? I have to clear energetic cords every day or my back pain comes back. I guess I would just be medicating it, right? And so when it comes to business, I think there's so much of that there was a big bubble, I believe, of really great brand leaders who were at the big wave of growing big brands and creating courses and all of these launch strategies. And is that working for people who are more tapped in? Not as much, not as much anymore. And so it was almost like this bubble burst of following these, let's say, dozen or 2 dozen names that really came out in the early 2000s. And now people who are wanting to feel more aligned and authentic saying, but how do I do it my way? Like, how do I
Yeah.
stop judging that that's not working? And then they're finding people like you and me and so many of your guests to say, oh, I can have the 3D experience and be working on my alignment every day.
Yes, yes. And you said something. You said it's not working. I want to dive in and get your
Yeah,
input. I have some ideas, but
yeah,
why do you think it's not going to I mean, it really hasn't been working, but we've been masking. Like, let's face it, right?
yeah,
We've been pushing things
yeah.
forward, forcing things forward, even when we know the energy is getting stuck,
Hmm.
even when the results aren't coming back clean.
Yeah.
I don't know what I mean by that. I've never said that before. That just the results aren't clean. I don't know. Take what you want from that. But why do you think it may not be working going forward?
So many strategies. I have nothing against, I'm just calling like Marie Forleo. Like many of us know about like her B school was a big one and she had so many affiliates and Kate Northrup would promote it. And there was like these circles of people who were promoting each other's work. What I find to be more powerful now is instead of frameworks and teachings and courses that teach you information, more and more people can get information from ChatGPT or from, free courses that they can access. It's really now we're calling forward space holders. We're calling forward people who can help someone to navigate their own journey without judgment, without commingling. So for example, when I host a VIP day, we have an energy reading in the beginning, and then we plan out that person's 90-day roadmap. And I'm not judging whether I think it's a good idea or not, because everybody needs to have their own path, and they may need to experience trying YouTube for 90 days and realizing it's not the right fit. But I have opted into, paid big money to be in certain group programs that I have walked away from because I felt like the person called themselves a coach and didn't know how to safely hold space for people who are coming with different levels of experience, different definitions of success, different very real privileges or lack of privileges. And I think we're really going to see that those leaders in business that can hold space for people to evolve at their own pace and with authenticity are going to become those premium space holders. And those that are really just teaching knowledge are going to find that their methods aren't working anymore because it's not personalized, but it's harder to hold space for a personal journey because some of my clients don't get their big success testimonial until 2 years after we've worked together.
Mm-hmm.
But I was a part of the catalyst to put them on a completely different trajectory just by being there during that messy period. And so
Beautiful.
there's so many people who won't do that work because it's not going to get them the testimonial to build their website, if that makes sense. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think we're in this space where people are figuring out what they want to invest in, and service providers are figuring out, are they up to the task to hold space for that?
Makes so much sense. You explained it so well. And I figured you were going to say something about being authentic, and you did.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm going to share my opinion on
Yeah.
that. And I think we are all being called as a collective to
Hmm.
be more authentic and release the false self. So
Yeah.
many people are going through healing and integration. I love the term integration, but to me, it
Yeah.
means almost the same thing as healing, whatever you want to
Yep.
call it. But we are going through like all these different alchemy processes to get to the core of who we are. And there's different tools, I use astrology for business and career for my clients. Chelsea just uses straight up, pure intuition. Um, but they all kind of do the same thing. It's like it's meeting the client and the person and putting the person before the process and like meeting them in their discovery of being authentic. Because some of us don't know what our authentic self actually looks like, feels like. I've for myself, I was going to use someone else's example, but for myself, 5 years ago, I got a glimpse of my authentic self at a period of time, and I thought I was going crazy. And then I was like, oh, that's one of the real Vanessas. That's like the personality that really wants to shine in that environment at this day and time, blah, 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 blah. When I was so used to suppressing that version, doing other things in real estate or other things in my sales process. So really interesting. Thank you for honing in on that. Just everyone's going to come with their own skill sets and priorities and how they do things. And then there's the trial and error. You mentioned like someone may need to go through the process of setting up that YouTube channel. It may not be their most successful strategy, but it might be a part of their success indirectly, or just building the character or the routine or speaking up or things like that. So I love that. And it's also not so much the destination. I feel like that's where traditional business coaching is like result, result, result. So focused on the result. Yes, results matter, but it's also the process, like that development, that alchemy. And so I feel like that's a lot of
Yeah.
what you're saying.
Well, and I think there's so many things that are muscles, right? Like when you go to the gym, you're training your muscles. And there's things in business that you just need to experience and lift that heavy weight of. and finding your particular routine of tapping into intuition or whatever that's going to look like, whether it's astrology, human design, like what foundation, what framework, what feels helpful, what does not feel helpful. Many of my clients are like me and have a reason why they could make an excuse. I could say, I'm a mom, I homeschool, I have chronic health issues, I'm going through perimenopause, I'm neurodivergent. Those could all be very real excuses. But what I encourage people to look at is, well, what if we just create a real snapshot of what your capacity is? Because if I try to build a business how I did 10 years ago, when I could stay up all night and didn't have a son to get to school and like that version of me, I can never make that calendar again, probably ever again in my life. And if I keep downing myself, self-doubting and putting myself down or shaming because I can't do what I used to do, or I can't do what James Wedmore can do, or I can't do what Gary Vee with a huge team can do, right? If you really get clear on your intuition, the frameworks that support you to stay clear on defining success for you, your capacity, and make a plan that can actually fit within that, then you're going to gain momentum because we spend so much time beating ourselves up for not being able to do what we think we should do, right? And so instead, if you plan for your capacity, and that's what really my rooted method teaches, is to get honest about it and create a plan, we vastly underestimate what we can do in 90-day chunks of time that are intentionally planned out. Because as business owners, we vastly overestimate what we can do in this like make-believe calendar that's
Mhm.
never going to work.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, I really want to hone in on the authentic self piece
Mm,
here.
yeah,
She's talking about like just accepting what our capacity is without
yeah,
the force, without
yeah,
driving ourselves into burnout on like four
yeah,
different coffees in a day just to meet this invisible standard or to try to meet other people's capacity. It's just not
yeah,
sustainable. And there's so many
yeah.
consequences. And that's not what the universe is asking from us. So I
Mm.
want to carry this forward. I have some
Yeah,
other things I
yeah.
want to chat with you about. What is energetic hygiene?
Energetic hygiene. It was a term I actually used to host a podcast, and someone came on to my podcast. This was years ago, and she used the term, and I was like, what? I'd never heard it at the time, even though I'd been in the spiritual space. But to me, energetic hygiene is one of the most overlooked practices, especially for conscious entrepreneurs and energetically focused leaders. It is about having practices throughout your day where you are clearing your energy, especially for those of us who are highly sensitive. If we are constantly putting ourselves into spaces to connect with others, networking calls, client calls, creating content, right? Even getting onto a podcast interview like this, before our call, I cleared my energy. I used my pendulum to make sure that my cells were spinning the right way, that I didn't have any entities or negative energy or anything that I was going to bring into the conversation. I'm going to clear it after so I don't take any of your beautiful energy out into ways that it's not meant to be. And so finding small practices, rituals, they can be very simple. They do not have to be woo woo, they can be woo woo, right? Finding things that help you to understand what it looks like to be more of that pure channel as you're doing your work. And then as you close down your laptop for the day, not carrying all of that anxiety or self-doubt of other people you may have absorbed into spending time with your partner or going to the
Yeah.
gym, right? So creating these like small rituals that work for you. And I think everybody has their own toolkit. I've
Mhm.
created kind of a energetic hygiene toolkit so people can take what serves them and leave what doesn't resonate. But having practices, I'm sure you have some of your own, so that you are, it's like brushing your teeth. Like you're not
Yeah,
going to wait until it's a
absolutely.
problem and you're having an anxiety attack. I could have done this better in my legal practice, right? Instead, it's about just touching in, tuning in, oracle cards, pendulum, finding the things that work for you and then bringing them into your day so that you're not absorbing everything.
Yes, absolutely. And for contrast, can
Yeah.
you tell us of a time where maybe you did less energy
Oh, yeah.
hygiene or no
Yeah.
energy hygiene at all so we can kind of really understand?
Yeah, I would say early in my motherhood. So when my son was like 2, I remember a distinctive day where we had a nanny. And so I had to be like hyper productive in my nannying time, right? And I think I had 4 coaching calls that day. And so 4 very different people, different energy. And then one ran a little bit late, and I had to just close the laptop and run down. And I just felt rage. I felt anxious. My son was then, having a little bit of a tantrum. 2-year-olds do that. I'm the adult, but I was carrying two of my clients' energy. Like now looking back, I can identify it, but I was shitty that day. I was slamming doors and crabby and snapping. And then later that evening, I took, for me, I'm a water sign, and I often find cleansing baths and using my pendulum in the bath and channeling kind of messages to myself to be incredibly helpful. And I did that and was like, wow, none of that was mine. I was in a great mood this morning. I nourished myself well. Like none of that was mine, but I am an empath and I absorbed and I didn't clear it. And the rest of my day was dictated by their emotions, my clients' emotions.
For some of us, if we don't have an energy hygiene process or practice or habit,
Yeah,
we could experience that every day and not know that that's us being misaligned or not fully in alignment or not fully embodied. I went through that for years. I was just constantly, especially when I was doing real estate, so many appointments a day, 14-hour work days, closing, having a lot of emotions in one day, closing big deals and then losing a client, someone getting mad and like threatening to sue me or so that roller coaster of emotions. And I could ride the roller coaster of emotions because of some of the things in my human design chart and my astrology, but still just not. And I was during my real estate days, I really started to understand that I was an intuitive. And then I was also picking up the energy of the homes. Eventually, I started to do the house clearings was my first energetic process before I started to work on people. But it was the realization like, oh my God, I left that house and I am being so rude to people. What's happening?
sure.
Or I showed a house and the client wasn't there with me online or in person, they were on the phone. So it was just me in the house. Then I started to ask deeper questions, like, what did I pick up from the house? you know? So it's really interesting. I love your example. Thank you so much for sharing that. And hopefully my example for you guys really adds time. And I'll just throw in, Chelsea, my energetic cleansing practice now is I have so many things that I alternate. I would say Kundalini yoga is the most consistent. And I'll have an intention at the beginning, like I'm, releasing anyone's energy or whatever, clearing clients' energy or my own or whatever, just clearing my own stagnant energy from last week or a interaction with someone the previous day, those types of things. And I would also say like walking on the beach and grounding like what movement for me is so powerful. I'm also ADHD as well. So just movement gives me that physical and mental stimulation, also processing my thoughts and then really absorbing, intentionally breathing the grounding energy from the beach into my body and feeling it like come up through all of my meridians is such a great practice for myself. So hopefully that gives you guys ideas. What are some of your habits that you do on a daily basis now?
Yeah, well, and I'll share mine. And the through line is going to be intention. Because even if someone is nervous that I don't know Kundalini yoga, or I'm not dedicated in meditation practice, even washing your hands after being with a client and you're leaving your office with intention. I am intending to clear, right? Some of the things that I'm the most consistent with are journaling. I have a very specific manifestation journaling practice that I do. I really enjoy doing weekly oracle card pulls and clearing my office. I will often light sage or different woods and clear with smoke. I really enjoy having crystals throughout my house that I just touch with little intentions. And it's awfully fun teaching my 5-year-old son, who's definitely like the most energetic being I've ever met. Um, he'll come and use pendulum. Like, how lovely for him to be like, is there anyone else in my field? Right. So finding small, simple ways is what's worked best for me. If I try to create a big practice, that becomes distracting for me. But if I can, okay, I'm going to touch this crystal, I'm going to pull a card, I'm going to use um, my pendulum. I also really enjoy just visualizations. I'm a very visual person. So, just visualizing light coming through or grounding practices, chakra clearing. I go through phases. And for me, I'm
Yeah,
like, whatever's working right now is what I go with, unless or until it feels like, oh, maybe I want to swap this. And so I'm not
right.
super like dogmatic about it in any way. I'm
Yeah.
more of
But I
like
love that.
a,
I love what's current for you now. It's good
yeah,
to hear about that. So
yeah,
this is an intuitive question that I didn't expect to ask you, but it's
yeah.
coming through. Nervous systems. Do neurodivergent people and or intuitives, for the record, you guys, you don't have to be neurodivergent to be intuitive. You don't have to be intuitive to be neurodivergent.
Right.
But for those two groups of people, if you choose to identify in either one,
Yeah.
do we have does our nervous system operate slightly different than
Hmm.
others?
This is a fascinating topic to me. I'm also trained in human design. And so, if you're familiar with human design, there's like centers similar to chakra centers and astrology, right? Like, it's interesting for me to now, I'm open. If anybody wants to do a reading for me on anything, I'm like, sure. I love, for me, any of those formats are about just self awareness. I don't have to give my power away to anything, but just like, what does this think I would do? What, in Enneagram or archetype. And so, what's been fascinating to me is every framework that I have dipped into has indicated that I'm intuitive. And so when you think about neurodivergence, being more open, having different parts of your brain light up in different ways, creativity, human design, astrology, I think that I believe that everybody has a spectrum of being able to access intuition. I do believe we can condition ourselves out of it for fear or safety or career, right? Like, would it have been welcomed or accepted for me to use my pendulum in a closing on whether or not we should, negotiate a term? Absolutely not. I needed a risk and cost benefit analysis and risk assessment. And so we can condition ourselves out of it. But I do believe that a lot of people who become entrepreneurs or pursue creative endeavors have more likelihood of being intuitive. Many of us are neurodivergent, identify with different open centers. And so I think that we have more of a self responsibility to figure out what energetic hygiene looks like for us so that we're not absorbing everything and then moving forward in our own energy, because that's how we'll bring our best work out.
Beautiful. And I'll add to that. My personal opinion is I believe that our nervous systems can be more sensitive to stimuli,
Mm-hmm.
lights, sensitivity, textures. And so our nervous system can, jump up into different, I don't know, regulations
Yeah.
or levels of regulations a lot faster, a lot quicker than other people. ADHD people, that's why they could be like still and then moving around, and sometimes they can multitask, and the other person's like, wait, well, what are you doing? You're hyper. Stop. I feel like their nervous system can go between these different gears, if you will, then depending on the temperament of the person. And sometimes it's helpful and sometimes it's not. It's a little scattered, right? So I'm not glorifying it. I just wanted to add. So I think that with intuitive people, because we are accessing, the six different psychic senses, that allows us to shift between those gears of nervous system, states, and then also with neurodivergent people. So that's just kind of
Yeah.
my 2 cents. If you have anything you want to comment on.
Yeah, I really agree with that, especially the heightened sensitivity. And I believe that before I really understood what it was, I identified it as high anxiety. And so I think that we have the capacity, right, to understand and ground, but our nervous system can be overregulated if you're a very open person and taking in a lot and don't know that it's not yours. I think that's one of the challenges of evolving and maturing, maybe in a spiritual practice of
Yeah.
what is mine, what is not mine, and whatever's going to help you feel sovereign. So that I worked once with an intuitive development mentor, and she talked about this just like practice of bubbles, like picturing a bubble going up around you and being like, only what serves me can stay inside. And she just had it was five or six different things that you would say and hand motions that you would do of like pushing it out. But now that I've done it often enough, I can just be like, bubble. And like, okay, I can trust that that's going to do the intention I want it to do. But before that, it just felt like everything was in my field before I really
Yeah,
learned how to do that.
absolutely. That's a very good tool for detachment. And I think as an intuitives, whether you're intuitive, psychic, clairaudient, clairvoyant, it doesn't matter which of the six senses you use the most. I think detachment is something we need to learn with the ability. And they don't tell, well, maybe they do tell us that when we do like development for intuition, but they don't tell us that before we we decide to really like learn how to do it. So I think detachment, like I remember one time getting like information about a client that they weren't sharing, right? And it was very sensitive information. I had to detach from it until they were actually ready to bring it up. I couldn't take it on. I couldn't try to solve the problem. I literally had to say, thank you, universe. I will store this file until I need to pull this file out, right? So learn, if you're listening, really learn how to have some tools of detachment. Chelsea just told us one about the bubble. It's a tool of detachment for the moment. And that way you can, kind of stay present, not even kind of, you can stay present in your own energy, and that your present time is going to change. You're not always going to be in your own bubble. There's going to be a time where you interact with someone else. So that's beautiful. Thank you for that. And I can't believe we're almost out of time. We've talked about so many good things. What are some practical tips as we start to kind of wind down here? What are some practical tips for conscious entrepreneurs? I'll leave it general. I was going to get more
Yeah,
specific, but yeah,
yeah.
any practical tips that they could do on a weekly or daily basis?
Yeah, I would say slowing down. So many of us are chasing the algorithm. We are trying to keep up with inboxes. Like there's so much speed and so much activity in running a business, especially if you don't have a large team and you're playing lots of roles. And, just a very simple practice of even just sitting at your desk before you open up your laptop and putting one hand on your belly, one hand on your heart, 3 deep breaths. And, what am I meant to show up to? Who am I meant to serve today? How am I meant to feel? I do believe that one of the superpowers that any of us can access is just how our body feels. We can talk ourselves out of it, of like, oh, I have a pit in my stomach about making this investment, or I feel excited. And so, how can we actually just tiny baby steps of reestablishing that trust with what our body is trying to tell us and making discernment and decisions from that space? I believe that creating a relationship with your intuition is kind of like creating a relationship with like a toddler. If I tell a toddler, I'm going to play with you and then I don't, I'm going to play with you and then I don't, I'm going to play with you and then I don't, they're going to stop asking to play with me and they're going to go do something else. And so, what is one simple way that you could invite your intuition or invite your spirit team, invite guidance in? And even if that just means slowing down and asking a couple of questions of who am I meant to serve? What am I meant to do? What am I meant to share today? And just following that impulse. If something comes through, you're meant to email Vanessa, be on her podcast. I'm going to go do that email. Little bit of give and take can go a long way to build momentum in your intuition wanting to serve you and show up more.
I love that. Absolutely. If this conversation really resonates with you, please reach out to Chelsea. I'm going to give you her links here, or at least I will give you her website. And her website and everything else, her YouTube, her Instagram, and her
Mhm.
Facebook is here in the description. So you can click on it and just go directly there. I always like to spell it out for those of us who are multitasking, neurodivergent,
Yeah,
who might be
sure.
washing the dishes, and you can hear it. So that way it's in your awareness.
Yeah.
Her website is intuitivebusinessbydesign.com. Intuitivebusinessbydesign.com. Really quick, Chelsea,
Yeah.
what is one powerful way that people can work with you?
I have been growing an amazing community called the Rooted Community, which is made up of service providers who are just who we've been talking about today. And it's a very financially accessible community. We do group energy readings, group strategy readings. There's a library. There's all like the features that are exciting about it. But what I have found is people feel like they can just be safe. They can ask questions. They can explore what it looks like to bring spirituality into their business and allow it to unfold. So if anybody's been looking for a home, where they could feel like they're not being judged, they're being encouraged to be on this path. I would definitely encourage you to look at the Rooted community on my website.
Beautiful. And do you have a powerful quote or book recommendation for us?
I am a constant learner, so I'm going to share the most recent book that I listened to, re-listened to actually, is The Surrender Experiment by Michael Singer. I had been in a process this summer of releasing some offers and releasing some aspects of my business. The surrender experiment came back into my field, and I was like, I think I am meant to listen to this again, which is a great way for me to absorb. And it really just brought new knowledge and new integration in. So if that is a new one to you, consider it being put into your field.
Lovely. So I have to say this because it's a little
Yeah.
bit of a joke, and every time someone recommends that book.
Oh,
I read, well, I mean, it's just funny, right? It's ironic. That's why I share this, and then we got to wrap up. But I tried to read that book like twice, and I couldn't get into it. So that's my homework. Like I have to like surrender, right? Because it's called the
yeah.
surrender experiment, and each
Yeah.
time I'm like, ugh, what book's not moving fast enough?
You can
What's
listen
going
to
on here?
it.
And then I just kind of like, I put it down for a second and I
Yeah.
walk. So I just had to mention that. But
Maybe
keep
it's your
trying
time.
if you've had that experience and you're listening, use your intuition on the right
Yeah.
time. And I'm
Yeah.
I'm doing the same thing. So she's mentioning it today. It's been a couple months since someone's mentioned that book, so I might tap in on it again.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Love
thank you
that.
everyone for tuning in. Chelsea, thank you for your time, your energy, and your wisdom.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Namaste, everyone. Have a great day.